For me, fuchsias are the essence of summer. They're one of the first plants that I grew as a kid. My aunt grew about 6 different hardy varieties of fuchsia, and she taught me how to take cuttings and nurture them. So they've been a feature of my garden ever since, and they're so easy to grow that they should be a feature of yours too. So this fuchsia is growing in pretty much full sun, and it's really relishing it. Hardy fuchsias, once they get their roots down into the ground, are able to be really tough and long-lasting plants. But there are also the tender varieties too, and you can grow those in pots and containers for summer. They make great container plants, and really, even in light shade, you could get away with them. The only thing they don't like is deep, dark corners where they just won't flower. Planting wise, hardy fuchsias are best put in the ground in around about March or April time. They don't really want to be put in the ground in the winter or in the autumn, because sometimes they just die because of not being established, and also because the ground's too wet. So wait until the beginning of spring to plant hardy fuchsias. The tender varieties really can be planted in their containers or their hanging baskets or wherever you're going to put them in the garden. They can go out in around about April, May time. And you can also, surprisingly perhaps, sow fuchsias from seed. At the end of the season, you may find little black berries forming, quite juicy berries in fact. And if you squish those apart, you'll find little seeds in there that you can dry and then sow them the following spring, say in around April time. The big bonus with fuchsias is that they couldn't be more easy to care for, to be honest. The hardy ones just leave in the ground, and then when they die down in the autumn, leave them over the winter and then cut them back just before they start into growth in around about March. The tender varieties, then you need to lift those from their planting positions, bring them into a frost-free area indoors, keep them dry so that the top growth dies down over winter, and then start them back into growth the following spring. But they're really simple plants to grow. The only thing I really do to them is pinch out the growing tips when they're quite young so that I get a really strong bushy plant. Now the great thing about fuchsias is that really within a few short weeks you can have a plant this big that will be ready to go into the garden. If you start taking the cuttings as soon as the fuchsias start coming into growth in around about April time, you'll have a plant big enough to plant out in the current year. So I'm going to use this material that I collected from the garden, and then what I'm going to do is take my piece of cutting material and use a white tile. A glazed white tile is really good to use for propagating on. I'm going to take out the soft growing tip because that's the first thing that will wilt. I'm then going to turn the cutting round and going to cut off just below a node at the bottom there, and then strip off those bottom leaves really carefully. And then the next thing, which always looks a bit drastic, is to reduce the leaf area by half. So each of these remaining leaves, cut them back by about half, and that reduces the amount of evaporation from the cutting and means that it has a chance to root before it wilts. And there's my quite long cutting in this case. They don't need to be that long, but what I'm going to do is pop that straight into this pot full of compost that I've got here. Just going to make a little pilot hole using the end of my sharp craft knife there, and then push the cutting in up to the base of those bottom set of leaves, and then just tap the sides. I could put a cutting in each corner of the pot. Then all you need to do is water them thoroughly, put them somewhere nice and secluded, somewhere out of full sun, and they'll root in about 6 weeks' time. When it comes to pests and diseases, there's a couple of things that you really do need to watch out for with fuchsias. One is that they can often get really bad aphid attacks early in the year. And if that's the case, simply go, sounds a bit gruesome, go through the soft stems and pull off the aphids and pop them on the bird table for a bird feast. Now the other thing that they've been getting in recent years is something called fuchsia gall mite, and that infests the terminal part of the growth when the plants are quite young, makes them very distorted, and they don't flower. It's not something that you can do a lot about other than chopping the plants right down to ground level as soon as you see it, burning the material that's infested with the mite, and then seeing whether it reinfests. But it seems to be spreading its way north from the south coast up through the British Isles, so keep a wary eye out for it. Varieties wise, really the sky's the limit with fuchsias. The tender ones, I like things like Celia Smedley and La Campanella, but it's the hardy ones that I like the most. So the ones that my aunt used to grow were things like Alice Hoffman, Lena, Madame Corneliusson and Mrs. Popple. Those are the good old names, the good old favourites. But this one here is a real favourite of mine, not least because it's called David. It has quite small diminutive blooms, but it more than makes up for that with the sheer number of them. So to sum up, fuchsias, absolute winners, will give you flowers galore all through the summer, and they're really easy to look after.